Welcome back to the Philly Special, a bunch of guys who just like to talk about Philadelphia sports. This podcast is brought to you by Aunt Jemima. Now you're cooking. My name is Jason Hernandez, and I will be co-hosting with Alan Hirsch. Our statistician is Ben Lawson. So, Alan, before we get into anything, let's talk about the offseason and the stats for the 76ers last year.
All right, so last year, the 76ers had probably one of their best seasons in a while since the days of Allen Iverson. And that was definitely thanks to Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid leading the charge for the 76ers. Embiid led the team with a whopping 22.9 points per game, and Simmons had a very respectable 15.8 with 8.2 assists. So on offense, the 76ers are looking very solid, especially with those two on the floor. And then defensively, they're looking good too. Simmons had 0.9 blocks per game, Embiid had 1.8 blocks per game, and Simmons also had over 1 steal per game. So defensively and offensively, the 76ers are looking solid.
Yeah, and it's, I'm sorry. And it's not looking like Joel Embiid is just a 3-and-D kind of man. He's in my opinion, he's a future MVP. This man, he pretty much runs the court. How many minutes did you say he was averaging per game last year?
Per game, he averaged, 30.3 minutes per game.
Out of 48. That's insane. So, during the offseason, you didn't hear very much about the 76ers, actually. We know that they made a big push for LeBron.
And Kawhi, too.
And Kawhi, yeah. Trying to stay in the East. However, that obviously didn't play out. And while Kawhi did stay in the East, he went to the Raptors. Okay, so we'd like to bring up that J.J. Redick also does play a big role in the 76ers offense as well. This man is a sharpshooter from downtown.
Yeah, definitely one of the weak points on the 76ers roster is not many guys shoot the three. You have J.J. Redick, who averaged 2.8 per game with a 423 point percentage, and Robert Covington actually had 2.5 3-pointers per game with a .369 3-point percentage. So those two are pretty good shooters. J.J. Redick obviously is a very good shooter, and but the rest of the team has been lacking, and especially with the way the NBA is going this around this time, with more and more teams just relying heavily on the three ball, that's something that they're going to have to pick up a little bit.
Yeah, it's very, very important, especially in today's NBA, that you're able to shoot on a team. You see Joel Embiid, he's actually stretching the floor where he's averaging, he's averaging a 3-pointer a game. And this man, he's shooting very well, and he's continuously getting better. And during the offseason, you heard a lot of players were working on their shot just because of how important it is. And a lot of people wanted to. And how important is it really for a big man to shoot a three? Because with this way this NBA is becoming, it just seems like the three-pointer is everything you rely on. As if you look at Golden State, you look at Boston Celtics, you're looking at a lot of talent on these teams. And with Ben Simmons is a special character because though he is 6'10", where he'd be playing probably power forward or small forward, he's actually running the point. And you don't see very many big men running the point on any NBA team.
Yeah, that's true. Although again, there is a trend towards that these days, with players like last year LeBron was doing a lot of running the point for the Cavaliers, and you see it in Milwaukee with Giannis. That seems to be a trend going up, but you're right. Ben Simmons, he's a very good facilitator, and that's why they have him running the point. I mean, again, the 8.2 assists per game is excellent for a 6'10" player.
Yeah, it's very, very insane to see this happen. Now, before we get into the opening night, October 16th, let's just restate what can the 76ers do to improve their game heading into this season?
Again, just the 3-point shooting And as you stated before, you didn't see much from the 76ers in the offseason by way of making acquisitions. One thing I think they could have done is maybe go out and get a big man whose sole purpose is to get rebounds and block shots, like a Greg Monroe or somebody like that.
Entirely. Okay, now let's transition into October 16th at Boston against the Celtics, opening night. Let's look at the lineups. So, of course, you have Ben Simmons and you have Joel Embiid and J.J. Redick. Where do you think, Alan, Markelle Fultz fits into that role? Because it seems like, although they already have a point guard in Ben Simmons, Markelle, he changed his jumper during this offseason, so he could possibly be a better shot.
Yeah, they're expecting big things from Fultz this year, I think. Last year was a bit of a disappointment. He had that whole injury thing where nobody really knew what was going on. But yeah, he'll come back, and I don't think he'll be starting the first few games, but down the stretch they could definitely try to throw him in at, say, maybe a starting point guard or shooting guard in on this team.
It's going to be very, very hard opening-wise for the 76ers because, again, they are still a relatively new team, and so they have a lot of slack to cut. Now, you're looking at Boston, and Boston is looking like the monster of the East. You have Kyrie Irving running the point. You have this future all-star in Jason Tatum. You have Al Horford. You have the return of Gordon Hayward, which that injury was very, very scary to watch. Possibly Aaron Baines. And then you look at their bench, and their bench is, honestly, they call themselves a bench with attitude because they're just so strong. They have Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart. They have Jaylen Brown, Jabari Bird, and they just picked up Robert Williams III, who is this big center coming out of, I don't remember where they drafted him from, but they were his pick. So Boston is looking like a monster of the East because they have a lot of strength behind their numbers. Can you elaborate on how strong Boston really is, Alan?
Oh, yeah. A very complete team. Definitely looking like the best, at least now that LeBron is gone to the West. The Celtics, I don't see a weakness in their starting five as far as having Kyrie at the point guard and then having probably Jaylen Brown starting at shooting guard, Jason Tatum at forward, Al Horford in there, and, of course, Gordon Hayward coming back from his injury last year at a forward position. So that team is looking very scary, and again, their bench is looking incredible. Marcus Smart, a player who never really stands out to people who aren't Celtics fans because his stats seem very average, but he's a player that plays with a lot of hustle, a lot of grit, and he definitely impacts the Celtics in a very positive way.
Oh, entirely. Marcus Smart he's huge on defense. He has the energy. He has the charisma. He is a crazy, crazy strong dude. And his stats don't show it, but he is very important to the Celtics roster. Okay. Now, we did mention Kyrie. And Kyrie's contract expires after the season coming up. Where could you see Kyrie possibly landing, or if he's staying with the Celtics? How do you want to interpret that?
Of course, the future of Kyrie Irving definitely impacts the 76ers because as they are in the East and probably their biggest competition at this point, besides maybe the Raptors or Washington, is definitely Boston. And if Kyrie leaves Boston, that'll be a big step up for Philadelphia. I'm not sure where Kyrie goes. I think he'll stay in the East. I want to believe that he might even stay in Boston, but at this point, it's looking like it could be the New York Knicks next season, even though he's recently been stating that he wants to stay in Boston come the end of the season. So that could be huge for the Celtics and very scary if you're a Philadelphia 76ers fan.
Yeah, the future is bright in Boston, and Kyrie recognizes that, and in a recent interview it came out that Kyrie said he does want to stay in Boston. This is daunting, mostly because even though he is very satisfied with where he is now, he did mention previously when he was with the Cavs and LeBron that he did want to stay in the with the Cavaliers in Cleveland. However, obviously living in LeBron's shadow, you play second fiddle. Now the future is very, very bright in Boston. Like we said, we have Jason Tatum, who was third in runner-up or third in Rookie of the Year. This man, he's only 20 years old. You see him putting up crazy numbers in the playoffs, especially with the Boston playing not even at full force. You have Kyrie missing with his knee. You have Gordon Hayward with his horrific ankle injury. The future is bright in Boston.
The future's also bright in Philadelphia, though. Again, all their guys that they have right now that are their best players. Ben Simmons is 21, Joel Embiid 23, Dario Saric, another guy that we haven't mentioned who's been huge or who was huge for them last year. He's 23. Markel Fultz is only 19 years old, and Robert Covington is 27. So you can only see these players developing into even better players than they already are. There's a few things that they need to work on. Joel Embiid needs to try to stay healthy for an entire season. Obviously, that's not always up to the player, but having a healthy Joel Embiid all season would definitely help them out. And then just, again, healthy Markel Fultz, develop him, and Ben Simmons is on the right track. He's looking great. He will probably develop. All signs point to he definitely develops into a all-star player in the future.
Yeah, the future is definitely bright in the 76ers. As mentioned, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Markel Fultz. They have some returning members like JJ Redick. We have some crazy names up here. And their schedule isn't looking too bad at all. Where at first they play in the Garden against Boston, October 16th. But then they move on to slightly less challenging opponents in the Chicago Bulls, where you have Zach LaVine and of such, and then they play Orlando, and they go to the Pistons, and then the fifth game of the season they play against Milwaukee. Milwaukee has a very, very bright future. You see Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's putting up crazy numbers. He's going 77.8% from the free throw line. He's averaging 20.5 points per game, field goal percentage of 54%, and he's constantly getting better. And you see Malcolm Brogdon, Rookie of the Year when he was a rookie. You have Chris Middleton, Tony Snell, Eric Bledsoe. These are some big names we're putting up. So let's talk about the playoff picture in the East. Where do the 76ers fall, in your opinion, in the playoff picture?
Looking at it at the beginning of the season this year, to me, it looks like they're going to be finishing in second place behind the Boston Celtics. They could fall to third behind the Raptors, as the Raptors did lose DeMar DeRozan, but they lost him to gain a better player in Kawhi Leonard. And the Raptors were, I think, the first seed in the East last year, so that's going to be a very underrated team, I think. Everybody's talking about the 76ers and the Celtics, but nobody's talking about the Raptors, and they could honestly come out of the East in first place again this year, in my opinion. And another team that is coming up, or isn't coming up, they have been there for a few years, is the Washington Wizards. They've got players, you got John Wall, Bradley Beal, Otto Porter Jr., so that's another team that's very, very good, and it's going to be tough to stop. And again, the Wizards just picked up Dwight Howard this offseason, which in the past he was obviously very good in Orlando, but then after he was in Orlando, he got to a couple teams, the Lakers and the Rockets. Mm-hmm. Yeah, where they just didn't match his playing style. He was used to getting the ball more, but he had to give it up to players like Kobe and James Harden. Yeah, so those teams didn't really fit, and since then he seems like he's been a very under the radar player. But I think Dwight Howard really impacts that Washington Wizards roster, because one of the things that they don't really have that they do very well is defense, especially in the paint. And that's one thing that Dwight Howard offers a lot of, defense and rebounding down low. And that's one thing that they really needed, and they addressed it. So the Washington Wizards are another team that is going to be very strong.
Yeah, the playoff picture in the East is it's looking very challenging, actually. You have, like we said, Washington Wizards. We have the Milwaukee Bucks, the 76ers in Philly. We have the Toronto Raptors and Boston. In my personal opinion, I also see Boston finishing in first. Philadelphia, it'll be challenging at first. They're going to have to expand on what they have now and what they can have in the future. Quite possibly, looking at the Bucks from offseason, they took Boston, who made it to the conference finals against the Cavaliers. They took Boston to Game 7, as well as, I believe, the 76ers did. I'm not entirely sure. But you have Toronto, and like you said, they picked up Kawhi, which is great on their part for a year until his contract expires, and then I'm hearing rumors about him going to LA because that's where he requested. But quick side note, Toronto really did DeMar DeRozan dirty. They get rid of DeMar DeRozan. He's a franchise player. He's completely loyal, and it's very hard to see. And loyalty is not a big thing in the NBA recently. You see a lot of players going for money or for rings, as in KD. But one player that sticks out to me in loyalty, you got to talk about Dirk. Dirk spends 21 years with the Mavericks, and loyalty is not a thing in this NBA. And so when you see that, it's nice to see. So, transitioning, so we just talked about the East playoff. Let's talk about the West playoff. So, off the top of my head, obviously Golden State's been dominating in recent years. Is there any way that they won't make it to the finals this year? It's hard to say. They picked up DeMarcus Cousins. However, Boogie is coming off a torn Achilles, and that's a really, really hard injury to come off of. Athletic-wise, where if you rely on your athleticism as much as Boogie does, where the only player that's ever really come back from a torn Achilles in the NBA is Kobe Bryant, and he's the Black Mamba.
Yeah. Looking at, that Warriors roster is it's full of all-stars. Even if you don't count Cousins, who probably won't be there for a good part of the season with his injury, that's still 4 all-stars on that team. So that's going to be a tough team to beat. I'm not sure if anybody is going to be able to do it, at least this year. Houston's a great team down there. The Jazz are definitely looking up. They've got new kid, Donovan Mitchell. He just put up a great season last year. They've got other pieces down there, Rudy Gobert, Jay Crowder, who are really helping them out. The Lakers are looking great. They obviously added LeBron James, but they added some other players that kind of went under the radar this year, like Rajon Rondo, Lance Stevenson. Those are 2 big role players who I think will fit LeBron's playing style very well. But as for this season, I don't see anybody besides maybe the Rockets with Harden and Paul, and now Carmelo Anthony too, although who knows what his role is going to be. I don't see any of them really, except for the Rockets, challenging Golden State for a spot in the finals this year.
Right, and the problem with the Rockets is as long as they can keep CP3 healthy, then they have a really decent fighting chance. With him going down for Game 7 in the playoff finals, or in the Western Conference, it could have been a very different finals we had this past season if, say, CP3 ended up staying healthy, because it ended up going to Game 7 with Golden State, and you could have saw the Cavs and the Rockets. So it's very interesting to see. As long as things are staying on track, they're looking pretty solid. Okay, so you mentioned Donovan Mitchell. So Donovan Mitchell, great athlete, crazy awesome. You see him; he's doing a lot of jelly layups. He's crazy. You see putbacks. He has a lot going on. So does Sacramento. But Donovan Mitchell, he's a man in his own. So there was a lot of conflict last year between 76ers Ben Simmons and Utah Jazz Donovan Mitchell. Now, the conflict is that Ben Simmons was drafted 2 seasons ago. However, he sat out through an injury, and so he didn't get to play his rookie year. So last season was his rookie year. And Donovan Mitchell felt like he should have been rookie of the year because he thought Ben Simmons wasn't a rookie because he was drafted 2 years ago. However, he kind of contradicted himself where when he wore a sweatshirt that he found from Adidas, rookie is defined as a noun as an athlete playing his or her first season as a member of a professional sports team. And since Ben Simmons didn't actually play during his rookie season, this was his past rookie season. And honestly, I believe he was a rookie.
Yeah, that's true. Ben Simmons definitely was a rookie last year. And, yeah, Ben Simmons, and I mean Donovan Mitchell too, they're both going to be great players. But Ben Simmons, I just see him having a great career. He's already such a versatile kid, and I don't see him ever falling off, really. I only see him getting better and better as the years go on. He can do it all, it seems, except for shooting the 3-ball, but that's something he could work on in the future. But besides shooting threes, that man, he gets rebounds, he gets assists, he shoots very well. His field goal percentage last year was over 50%, so that's very good. And he's big, and he's doing all these things as a big man, and he's very agile. He's a very good facilitator, gets a lot of assists. He has a good eye for the open man. It seems like he's got eyes in the back of his head, so he's a big reason the Philadelphia 76ers are as successful as they are these days, and I think he's going to play a huge part in their future.
Entirely, and Simmons isn't even looking to expand his three-point range. So the future is very bright in 76ers. That's what we established during this podcast. Thank you for tuning into the Philly special. Again, this episode was sponsored by Aunt Jemima. Now you're cooking. Thank you for listening.